3 minutes to speak. You'll need to come up, sit down, and speak into the mic so everybody on there can hear you as well as everybody else in the room. So I'm going to go left, right around the room. And if you want to start, please go up to the mic, state your name, where you are on the bill, and your comments. Thank you.
Can we have the door shut, please? So we can hear better. Tell them to come in if they want, but either in or out. Lock the door.
Hello, my name is Ainsley Erzen. I am a track and field state record holder and national champion, and I will be attending the University of Arkansas next year on a track and field and soccer scholarship. As I'm sure most of you know, I recently had an article in the defense of the preservation of girls' sports published in the Des Moines Register. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all today to give a voice to the hundreds of girls and their parents who have gotten behind me these past few days. Girls that, though passionate about the issue, feel too helpless and too afraid to voice their opinion publicly. And to be completely honest, who can blame them? We found ourselves lost in a society that teaches us that staying silent is the best form of kindness, that nurturing others' lies and delusions is the most loving thing that we can do, and that comfort is far more valuable than truth will ever be. A society so selfish as to twist the sports girls love into sacrificial offerings for their own political agendas. A society that has attempted and in many cases succeeded in reducing women to nothing more than a hormone level. A society where acknowledging something as simple and straightforward as the differences between a man and a woman is enough to qualify you as a hateful, homophobic, transphobic, disgusting excuse for a human being. These are all accusations I've received since my article was published, but all accusations I'm willing to bear if it will ensure all young women now and all little girls in the future can experience all the amazing opportunities that I've been so blessed to receive. My two youngest sisters came to support me today, girls who are old enough and smart enough to recognize the utter ridiculousness of the need for the debate at hand, but who are still innocent enough to believe that people of power will undoubtedly do the right thing. I beg you do not prove them wrong. I refuse to live in a world where little girls like my sisters have records, titles, and scholarships robbed from them by biologically male individuals. A world where they can't even feel safe in their own locker rooms because we've allowed them to be hijacked by men on the basis of their feelings. At the end of the day, we compete with our bodies, not our self-proclaimed identities. This is not an attack on the trans community. This is a fight for the restoration of the rights so many women before us have fought so hard to secure. So here I am, one girl, though scared, standing alone to speak out for the many. Because I know the consequences of silence and submission are far scarier than any speech I have to give, any article I have to write, any crowd I have to face, or any hate I will inevitably receive. Today, I urge each and every one of you to find the courage within yourselves to protect every little girl that's ever dared to work hard and dream big. Our futures are in your hands. Remember that.
Thank you. Next.
Family leader support. Thanks for bringing this bill. My message is pretty simple. Follow the science. Women deserve to compete on a level playing field. Allowing men to compete in women's sports destroys fair competition and women's athletic opportunities. Girls deserve equal opportunities to experience the thrill of victory. But allowing males to compete in women's sports disadvantages girls and destroys those opportunities. Girls should not be sidelined in their own sport. Women fought long and hard for equal athletic opportunities. Title IX was designed to stop discrimination and create equal athletic opportunities for women. Allowing males to compete in women's sports reverses nearly 50 years of advances for women. And for what it's worth, this is a political body. According to a recent poll, over 75% of Americans agree that allowing biological males to compete in women's sports is unfair. When we ignore biological reality, when we ignore the science, girls get hurt in athletics. Girls are losing medals, podium spots, public recognition, and opportunities to compete. Parenthetically, I have 6 daughters and 9 granddaughters. All my daughters competed. Several got college scholarships, one of whom got a broken nose in soccer a few months ago, playing college soccer at Northwestern in Iowa. If she'd have run into a guy, she would have had way more than a broken nose. Every male who competes against a female in a women's track event displaces a deserving female. Athletes train tirelessly to shave mere fractions of a second off their race times, but that effort is wasted on an uneven playing field. Women competing against males know the outcome before the race even starts. For example, in 1 year, 275 high school boys, not college, not professional, 275 high school boys ran faster times than the world's fastest female track athlete. Over 90% of female executives play competitive sports. Destroying women's athletic opportunities hurts their professional opportunities as adults. Thank you for bringing the bill. Let's bring common sense to women's sports.
Thank you. Next.
Melissa Peterson with the Iowa State Education Association. We are registered as firmly in opposition of this piece of legislation as we could possibly be. We believe this bill seeks to discriminate and also seeks to divide, as well as penalize public employees, public school employees, who are tasked with the incredible responsibility of providing a quality, inclusive, equitable education experience for every single student that shows up in our public schools. This bill does not create space for trans girls to participate in athletics, which we know is an important component of a well-rounded opportunity for education. Sports is one of the things that helps keep kids interested and enthusiastic about their educational experience. This bill would not create space and would not allow our incredibly important education professionals to provide for an inclusive, quality educational experience. We implore you not to move this legislation any further. Additionally, this bill would impose penalties while simultaneously protecting school districts who would be in violation of federal law. It places the burden on the individual employees, that includes teachers and coaches, by the way, if they were to stand up against such discrimination. Please do not do this. We do not have these issues of competition or discriminatory practices right now. When these individual cases come up, the Athletic Association has been dealing with them in an equitable and inclusive fashion on a case-by-case basis. This bill is a solution in search of a problem, and it would codify discrimination that works against the foundational principles of providing a safe, healthy, equitable, and inclusive public education experience for all of our students. Please do not move this forward.
My name is Pete McRoberts with the ACLU of Iowa. I'll keep this very quick. We strongly oppose this. If this bill is enacted, it will be telling a generation of school kids who are marginalized that the government of Iowa is all right in using its power to discriminate on account of sex and gender. They will be right. This bill should not advance. School kids are vulnerable, transgender school kids. They deserve the protection, not your marginalization. We're talking about a very limited number of kids in grade schools and in high schools in Iowa, and I would encourage you to see them as children who are in need of help. Every child, every school child deserves an equal shot at the law, and all law must apply to kids in all Iowans equally. So for that reason, we strongly ask you to decline to advance this bill. I think that a fair Iowa is worth protecting, and you have the power to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Emily? If you would like to speak, make your way that way, so it looks like it's the only mic of the chair.
In our public employees, where they'll have to make a decision as to whether they violate state law or whether they violate federal law. That is going to have serious consequences, not only for our employees, but for the districts and for the taxpayer as we seek to defend ourselves. We ask that you do not put us in this position of having to choose between a state law and a federal law. And I would just point out federal law does trump state law in this case, and not move this forward. The end result for school districts is going to be confusion, it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be very difficult for them to manage. Thank you.
Here, my name is Danny Carroll. I'm a lobbyist for the Family Leader. My name is Danny Carroll. I'm a lobbyist for the Family Leader. I'd like to read a letter from a teacher. His name is Matt Olson. I know Matt personally, and I'll have a copy of his written remarks when I'm finished. My name is Matt Olson, and I'm writing to you in favor of House File 2309. As a public educator of 27 years, a former coach of both girls and boys sports, and a father of 7 children, 2 of which are girls, the differences between the genders is obvious. Simple science points us to the chromosomal differences, not to mention the biological and physical differences as well. I've taught several sports in my career as a coach. There was varsity boys soccer, middle school girls and boys basketball, but the last sport I coached was boys 8th grade football. I frequently had girls joining my team, but they never lasted more than a few weeks. Those girls would pour their hearts out, attempting to keep up with their male peers. But after a few weeks, it would become apparent they simply could not keep up. Soon after, they would drop off the team, all of them doing so on their own volition. It's plain and simple. Boys have a superior athletic advantage over girls and should have no place in girls' athletics. Simple science will continuously point us to the chromosomal differences. I teach that to my 6th grade students. I teach that to my 2 daughters growing up outnumbered by their 5 brothers. We need to vigorously protect our girls and make sure they have every available opportunity to succeed. I strongly encourage you to pass this legislation, make it clear once and for all in the state of Iowa, we protect girls' sports, period. Thank you very much. Copy.
Thank you, Tyler Hall of Waterloo, Iowa. I am here in support of this. I spoke to a classmate of mine, class of 1986, Cedar Falls High School, who happened coincidentally to run the 800 meters and qualify for the Drake relays. She tells the story of being on the same track as Herschel Walker and what a cool experience that was. And this opportunity for girls to be at the Drake relays would be impossible if they were running against boys. In her message to me, she said boys ran 10 to 20 seconds faster than her. She wouldn't have qualified for this. This current administration has been working very hard, empowering women, getting them into STEM, getting them into college, helping break through the glass ceiling. The idea that somebody could simply, on their own word, identify as a girl and participate in girls' sports, take away the scholarship opportunities for these girls to continue their education is absolutely amazing to me. 6 years ago, I ran for this office. This issue was not on my radar screen at all. I never would have dreamed that it would be an issue, but here we are today arguing whether it is appropriate for biological boys to compete against biological girls. I spoke to another friend of mine who is the former coach of the USA women's volleyball team, also a graduate of Cedar Falls High. And I asked him for his opinion on this, and he said there's a clear difference. In volleyball, they actually have a lower net level for the women than they do at the men's level. Should we have equity mandating that the nets be equal in both? This is something that is an attack on women. I read the comments and I saw the same comments over and over spammed in there. I saw comments from people for this that were obviously written by them. My mother was a member of the American Association of University Women back when Title IX was pushed through. She was the president of the Blackhawk County chapter during the ERA days. She would be appalled that this is even being discussed. The people that are supporting this, and this is a rightful piece of legislation that needs to go through, are supporting women's opportunities, and the hate is coming towards women to deny them their opportunities. This is a bill that needs to go through, needs to be put on the floor, and everyone needs to vote on it, up or down, and we'll see how things turn out in November. Let's get it through, get it to the other side, and get it to the governor's desk ASAP. Thank you.
My name is Catherine Keeter and I represent Valor, Iowa and Concerned Women for America of Iowa, and both groups are in strong support of this legislation. Thank you so much for bringing this bill forward to protect women. For 50 years, women have found fairness and equality on the field with the passage of Title IX in 1972 has already been said. Title IX is federal law that prohibits discrimination in education programs and activities on the basis of sex. Athletics for women are an avenue for development, opportunity, and success, ranging from achieving personal goals, building community with your team and amongst your sport, winning medals and scholarships. However, across the country, we are seeing a dramatic shift in women's sports as fair competition and equality fall under threat as men enter women's sports. Science, biology, and common sense stand with women regarding the differences of men and women and the impact men have on women's sports. Exercise physiology expert Dr. Gregory A. Brown of the University of Nebraska published an exhaustive review of existing research concluding that men and adolescent boys perform better in almost all sports than women and adolescent girls because of their inherent physiological advantages that develop during male puberty. Additionally, regarding men who suppress their testosterone, research at the Karolinska Institute and the University of Manchester concluded that after 1 year of treatment, the physical advantage enjoyed by biological males over females is only minimally reduced when testosterone is suppressed. Furthermore, the reductions observed in muscle mass, size, and strength are very small compared to the baseline differences between males and females in comparables. Men competing in women's sports, whether they are suppressing the hormones, does not change the fact that they are still men, and their presence in the sport is creating an unequal playing field. We are seeing the disaster of men and women's sports played out in places like Connecticut and Boise State, where female track athletes lost medals and state titles to men competing in their sports. As a personal note, I won't go into the details on how sports in high school and college greatly impacted my life, but I would not be the person I am today without them. From my coaches to my teammates, to practices to games, to victories to losses, they were all an opportunity to learn and better myself as a woman. It breaks my heart to know that the girls across this country may not get to share the same experiences as men jump in to take their place. Sports and athletic abilities of each sex set aside, this bill is about truth. Men and women are different. Men are not women and women are not men. Biological sex matters, and gender identity, a self-defined perception, should not overrule biological sex. It is the truth in this bill that will protect girls' sports in Iowa. Thank you for this bill, and the only addition we would ask for the bill is that the bill would be expanded to college-level sports, as women, no matter what level, deserve protection. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Olson. I'm the family leader. I'm here today in support of House File 2309 because women deserve to compete on a level playing field. Excuse me. I have 5 brothers, and I grew up outnumbered by the boys everywhere I turned. And in that, my mother was very quick to teach me that being a girl was a wonderful thing, and I was different, and that was meant to be celebrated. I wouldn't always be able to keep up regardless of how much I wanted to. She made sure that I knew I had a voice, despite others telling me that I didn't. I processed things differently than my brothers, but in that, she made sure I knew that I could fight for myself. In that, the bottom line is, boys and girls are different. Girls deserve to be able to compete in athletics on a level playing field. By allowing boys to compete in girls' sports, the years of hard-fought battles trying to fight for equality will always be lost. Girls should never be sidelined in their own sports. So thank you for bringing this bill forward today, protecting girls and the opportunity for competition.
Hello, I am Poppy Malone. I'm a 7th grader from Ames Middle School. I'm in support of this bill. I'm a wrestler and a runner, and I know what it feels like to compete with males. Even though transgender females think they are girls, they are biologically males, and they have a lot more testosterone and their muscles develop differently than females, making them stronger. Last night I was reading comments about this bill, and them saying discrimination and it's unfair hurt me. The people saying those comments don't know what it's like to wrestle or do any sports with biological males. Them saying trans people should be able to do sports. They are right. They can still do sports, but they need to make it equal and compete with the males. There is a transgender female in the girls' division for swinging. They are breaking records that no girl will break. They shattered girls' dreams of becoming Olympic gold medalists. world champion, and record holder. I have wrestled males before. I know what it's like. If you don't want to wrestle boys, but a transgender female comes in and wrestles you, you're probably going to get beat. Caitlyn Jenner is a transgender female, and she said that transgender females should not compete with girls, and that we need to protect girls' sports. That shows something, and you should listen. Girls wrestle girls for a reason. Wrestling just got sanctioned for girls, and I am not going to let girls come in and ruin the sport for us. We fought so hard to get girls wrestling going, and it's not going to be enough. Transgender females can still do sports, but with the males. Thank you for your time, and I encourage you to support this bill.
Hi, my name is Gabby Smith, and my favorite sports are volleyball and bowling, and also participate in track and field. Though my transition, the best thing to look forward to at the end of the day are those sports. They help me make new friendships and keep the old ones. They have made me stronger mentally and physically. If I were told I couldn't play the sports that I want to, and for the gender that I identify as, I would feel less about myself. Like I am being forced to feel different about who I am. At the same time, I would be confused. Because I am a girl, so shouldn't I be able to play for the girls' team? Thank you.
My daughter is Gabby, that you just heard. In 6th grade, Gabby was very excited to be able to be involved in school sports. She wanted to go out for volleyball just like all of her friends. When I discussed this with our school activity director, I was told initially that she would not be able to participate in any female sports, but she was welcome to go out for any male sports. I was gutted and brought to immediate tears. I wasn't sure how I was going to break this to Gabby. But 2 minutes later, I got another phone call from that same activity or athletic director. He was saying that he was incorrect in what he had told me, and that Gabby could participate in any sports that she wanted. I was so relieved that I wouldn't have to go back to Gabby with that horrible news that she couldn't go out for the volleyball sport that she wanted to. Since then, Gabby has continued to participate in volleyball, softball, track, and bowling. We have observed her making new friendships, and she's becoming more confident, and she is working to live her best life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up.
Hello, I'm Dr. Katie Larsenoli. I'm here in opposition of this bill. Our goal as pediatricians is to keep our children healthy and safe. Transgender children are at risk of very poor mental and physical health. They're high risk for suicide, and this risk is both in childhood and in adulthood. But two of the best supports that a child can have that are shown in the medical literature to improve outcomes for our children and to improve their health both as children and adults are first, support from their families, but secondly, support from their schools and a feeling of belonging in their schools. So school sports are just, everybody here knows this. We're all acknowledging that school sports and sports for girls are an important part of how girls are part of their school. And all children should have this support, and no children should be excluded. And that's why I'm speaking to oppose this bill, because I would like our transgender children to be included and supported and safe and not excluded. That's the end of my prepared remarks, but I'd like to say, as a pediatric endocrinologist and somebody who is an expert in this field, I would like to point out that the difference between biological males and biological females is not simple, nor does it come down to chromosomes. There are people who are 46XX and have testicles and are fertile as a male and make sperm. There are people who are 46XY who have breasts and are women. It is not as simple as we think it is. The reason we use the brain to determine gender is that is the only definitive organ. And the brain is gendered in early childhood, and this is true for all children. So it hurt my heart to hear people say so many times that science has proven that it's easy to tell between male and females, because that isn't true. I take care of children with differences of sexual development. That's one of my jobs. And when I looked at this bill, I was very worried about those children because sometimes we don't get it right when they're born. And when your gender is determined by your birth certificate, that just doesn't always fit. Even if we exclude brains, which is the only definitive answer, we still will have people who will be excluded. So women's sports are important and beautiful, and they're so important, and I want everybody to be excluded. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Laura Lee Baker. I'm a psychotherapist with Inclusive Insight Psychotherapy and Consulting in West Des Moines. I'm here in opposition to this bill. I'd like to speak about both the mental health ramifications of bringing this bill forward and about the importance of school sports. Kids learn a lot about important lessons in sports, leadership, confidence, self-respect, and what it means to be part of a team. Transgender kids want the opportunity to play sports, just like anyone else, for the same reasons that other kids do, to be part of a team where they feel like they belong. We should not ban them from playing because they're transgender. We can celebrate kids and girls' sports and protect transgender youth from discrimination. Making sure that all youth and young people can access the lessons and opportunities that sports afford. The fact is, 99.9% of kids play sports without ever competing at any kind of elite level. And the overwhelming majority of transgender youth, like most kids, just want to play and participate in everyday sports with their peers. Current laws already protect trans students and also protect women's sports. There's no conflict between the two. States and federal government can adopt reasonable rules that both prohibit discrimination and ensure fairness. There's really no reason to keep bringing these bills forward. As a mental health professional, I'm really concerned. It seems like every year I have to keep showing up at the Capitol to speak to you about bills like this, and it concerns me. It feels like every year there's a continual attack on transgender youth, and I'm really wondering why. We know that between 30 to 50% of trans youth will attempt suicide in their lifetime. And I'm wondering why you do not care about that. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Katie Ward. I'm a physician at the University of Iowa, a clinical professor in the Department of Family Medicine. My esteemed colleague, Dr. Nicole Nisley, I co-direct the University of Iowa Healthcare LGBTQ Clinic. I'm speaking on my behalf, not on behalf of the University of Iowa Healthcare today. And I vehemently oppose this proposed legislation. I had a clinic yesterday, and my physician assistant and I saw about 28 transgender and gender diverse patients. 4 of those patients we were seeing in follow-up for a recent hospitalization for suicide attempt. I wish that I could say that this was something of an abnormality, but the fact is that it's not. Every day that I see patients, I ask them screening questions about depression and anxiety, because the truth is that mental health illnesses are in extraordinarily disparate proportion amongst transgender youth and adults as compared to their non-transgender or cisgender peers. One recent study said that 44% of transgender high school students reported thoughts of suicide in the year before that study. That's compared to 16% of their cisgender peers. We know that transgender youth are at high risk of depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide and suicide attempts, substance use, and obesity. And I want to now just pivot quickly to things that others have said about the benefits of sport. You can put up those health outcomes, those disparate health outcomes and those risks, and then put up the benefits of sport, and it is like we have an antidote to it. Sports are amazingly helpful. They decrease rates of obesity, they decrease rates of depression and anxiety, they decrease rates of thoughts of suicide, they increase school connectedness and feelings of belonging. This bill portends to protect girls, and what it is doing is solving a problem that doesn't exist. We know there's a problem. The problem is that transgender youth are at high risk for poor mental health outcomes. And instead of doing whatever we could and expending your energy and your privilege and your power and trying to help these children, these kids succeed with something as amazingly wonderful as being able to participate in their affirmed gender, we're instead doing something that further marginalizes and discriminates against them. I implore you not to move this forward. I implore you to follow the science. The science is that trans youth need help and support. Let's let them have that. Thank you so much.
Stacy Schmidt, and I'm here speaking as an individual. For 18 years, I have been teaching in public high schools here in Iowa, and in that time, I've also worked as a volleyball coach in the sub-varsity and varsity levels, the tennis coach in sub-varsity and varsity levels, and a volleyball official in middle school through varsity levels, even in some of Iowa's largest conferences. Today I'm here speaking as a teacher. One of the many building level goals at Lincoln High School in Des Moines, where I currently teach, is to have at least 40% of students involved in community partnerships or district-sponsored activities, which includes school-based athletic programs. The reason for this goal is simple. Research shows that student involvement in extracurricular activities has positive impact on students' overall academic success. Students who participate in extracurricular activities have greater levels of academic achievement. This includes classroom grades and standardized test scores. Second, extracurricular participation supports student character development by giving them leadership skills, time management skills, and the ability to accept constructive criticism. Third, participation raises students' self-esteem and resiliency. As others have mentioned, this aspect of participation is critical for trans athletes when you consider the fact that LGBTQ+ young people are more than 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their cisgender peers. It is not a stretch to say that participation in a gender-affirming athletic program could literally save lives. While the proposed bill would not exclude trans and non-binary youth from all extracurricular activities, prohibiting trans youth from participating in the sport programs of their affirming gender identity sends a clear message. And that message is that trans kids are not deserving of equal opportunities for success compared to their cisgender peers. All students should have the option to participate in the full range of extracurricular activities provided in Iowa schools, including participation in athletic programs aligned to affirming gender identities. A student's identity as trans or non-binary should not be the determining factor in whether or not they are able to participate in school athletics. There's a wealth of research showing that participation in activities is directly connected to school attendance, character development, academic and social success, and peer relationships. It is clear that the known, evidence-supported, positive impact of participation in activities outweighs the unsubstantiated perception of any advantage for trans athletes in specific programs. I urge you not to move this bill forward.
Hello, Representatives. Keenan Crow with One Iowa. I'd like to start off just with some points of agreement. We all want sports to be fair. Everybody at this table does. We all want girls to be safe and to have equal opportunities to succeed. But none of that requires excluding transgender girls. Like any other students, transgender girls deserve the same chances to learn teamwork, sportsmanship, leadership, and self-discipline, and to build a sense of belonging with their peers. That's what playing sports is about. When we tell transgender girls that they can't play on a team with their friends, they lose out on those important life lessons. Local schools across our state are already creating policies that protect transgender youth and ensure a level playing field for all students, and they're working. Iowa hasn't had a single incident of even alleged unfairness, let alone a documented case. Blanket bans on transgender athletes undermine all these local efforts. This bill is being presented as some kind of zero-sum game, where in order to protect girls' sports, we have to categorically exclude transgender girls, and that could not be further from the truth. There are many real, documented problems in girls and women's sports. Many scholars and women's organizations, including the Women's Sports Foundation, the Tucker Center for Girls and Women in Sport, and the International Working Group on Girls and Women in Sport, have conducted extensive research into these issues that women and girls in sport are confronting over the last 50 years. Women and girls continue to face unequal opportunities, inequitable funding, pay inequities, uneven media coverage driven by gender stereotypes, a lack of sponsorship opportunities, higher rates of sexual harassment and abuse, and incomplete implementation of Title IX in sports. In fact, no school has ever lost Title IX funding for violating Title IX athletic protections. So if anyone here today is willing to commit to solving any of those real documented issues with girls and women's sports, then we will be here to work with you on that. But unfortunately, instead of investigating those drivers of real inequity, what we're talking about today is further marginalizing a vulnerable group of children. Children who are already at statistically increased risk of adverse mental health outcomes and suicide. And we're telling them that they are somehow to blame for the problems in girls and women's sports, despite no documented instances of unfairness here in our state. This is extremely harmful. It's illegal under federal law, and it's distracting from the real problems at hand. So I ask you to reject this legislation, work with us to fix the actual problems in girls and women's sports, and listen to the real harm that this will cause transgender children and their families. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of Valor in full favor of this bill. I come here as a parent, and I had 3 daughters. Well, God bless me with 3 daughters. 2 of them were very athletic. I don't know that they would have competed in athletics if they had to compete with the males. Many were transgender. Many of the records that they set are still intact. That's not a big thing. They go by the wayside sooner or later. There's always an opportunity for people to compete in life, but it doesn't have to be in men or boy and girl sports in school. To not identify that there's a difference in a male or a female is unbelievable to me. Think of you that have bought car insurance for your kids. Is there a difference in the rates? When you buy life insurance, is there a difference in the rates? They are not the same. They're not the same mentally. They're not the same physically. Each one has tremendous attributes. Each one is given those attributes by our Heavenly Father. I believe greatly that there is a difference. What we do to further confuse kids is detrimental to the children. Suicide rates are high, but we got to deal with the problem. The problem is not them not playing sports. The problem is how they're identifying. Kids can grow up and they can compete. 2 of my girls are career military, and they've excelled in that. They've excelled in that competing against men, and they have their place. But the difference between a girl and a boy has to be sustained, and it cannot be derailed at this level. Thank you.
With their peers. I also want to echo what Keenan Crow said, that there has never been a documented complaint of a trans athlete having an unfair advantage or feeling that they had somehow gained an extra advantage or an extra benefit from participating in sports here in Iowa. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. I'm Connie Ryan, Executive Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa. We are strongly and adamantly opposed to House File 2309. Back in the day, I used to play basketball. It's true. It was one of the most important parts of my middle school and high school life. I wasn't one of the best by far, but I worked super hard at the game and to be better. The game sanctioned in Iowa in those days for girls was discriminatory. There is no other way to say it. Girls in Iowa were only allowed to play half court. We were treated as if we were fragile, as if we were less than. This included some of my teammates that were fantastic ball players, as athletic and skilled or more than their boy counterparts. Discrimination and being treated as less than is harmful to the spirit and to the soul, and it should never happen. We all know that sports can bring great value to our lives and to the health and well-being of our youth. It brings a sense of belonging, a sense of accomplishment, and it builds confidence. I know that many of you do not understand what it means to be transgender, and that's okay. There is no judgment for not understanding. We don't know what we don't know. At the same time, people who are transgender will tell you that they are a transgender boy or they are a transgender girl. It is our job to hear them and to believe them, and it is not our job to judge or take things away just because we do not understand. And since this bill harms transgender children just simply by being introduced because it sends a message that you do not belong. You are not good enough just for being yourself. It will harm transgender children even more if it becomes law. It will deny transgender children, both transgender boys and transgender girls, the ability to play the sport based on their true, authentic self. Iowa does not need to be like this. We do not need to have extreme legislation that harms children. We are better than this. This is not about other children who are not transgender. They are not harmed by transgender girls or transgender boys playing a sport that is simply a fallacy. They will actually grow and thrive when they are taught to respect and care about all people simply for who they are. Treating all children, including transgender boys and girls, with the respect and dignity that they deserve will only serve to help every child learn and grow and thrive. It should be reflected in our laws. Please oppose this legislation.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Todd, and I'm the father of 4 beautiful girls. And so comes the end of our Jedi mind tricks. It's really quite simple, and we live in an age now where people are trying to upend reality for all manner of reasons. But this is 1 + 1 = 2 territory. 1 + 1 does not equal giraffe. 1 + 1 does not equal cucumber. This is 1 + 1 = 2. And you know who knows that, interestingly enough? The women who would like to live the life as men at the highest levels. You know what sport they play? They play on the girls' side because they know. And they want to live a life differently in other ends, but they know when it comes down to that, they can't identify as a boy and go play boy sports because they won't play. It can't happen. It won't happen. It only goes the other way. That should make us think a little bit. That should make us think a lot. And as for the grown women in this room, we keep talking about mental illness. What is clearly being stated here is that you take a man and you give him mental illness and you chemically castrate him, and voila, there's a woman. I can't think of a more insulting thing to say to half of all the people on this planet. And so we need to help these people. I agree. But interestingly enough, we talk about help. Well, over at the University of Pennsylvania right now, here's what's happening. There is a guy jumping not only in the pool and destroying the girls' race times their records, but also taking his naked body into the locker room as well. And in order to fight that, I'm not sure where the dads are in that room, but slowly, the 30 women on that team are speaking up. Slowly, and they're finding their voice. Half of them, and their parents, though, they're the ones being told to get counseling. Instead of the guy, the 16 girls are told to get counseling. So you all say you care about mental health. You're making it 100 times worse. And you're making a 7th grade girl come in here and do the job that none of you will. This ends now. This ends today. 1 + 1 = 2. Don't make it more complicated than that. I don't want to have to come back here again, and I don't want to have to keep explaining to my 4 daughters, Dad, how does this happen? This ends now.